So welcome, Sarah, and over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michelle. And without further ado, let's get started. All right. So today's discussion is really about engaging with employers and negotiating customized positions for youth, young job seekers with disabilities. So I'm very excited to be here. As Michelle said, I was a transition teacher in my youth, and then moved to the adult service system, and have been working diligently around employment and seamless transition for 100,000 years. So I'm really excited to be here and to share some of the stuff that we've learned about working with employers and working with youth. So let's get started. So with customized employment is an amazing tool. It really kind of reframes how we see our job seekers with disabilities and how we approach and partner with employers. It is an individualized approach to job placement that really does help youth identify their strengths and aspirations, and then we can utilize that to really then approach employers in a value-adding way. So it really does make it, it's a real game changer for everyone. So it starts with really reframing how we see the people we serve or the students that we're serving. What we found, or what used to happen, was as teachers, we really focused on the disability, what was broken, what was wrong, what needed to be fixed. And instead of really looking at what the students' aspirations and goals are, and looking at what was really meaningful and how that student really defined themselves. So what we should be really looking at is their passions, their skills, their strengths, their life experiences, the things that they like, the things that they hate. And that's exactly what customized employment does during the discovery phase. One of the things I am including in the handouts is a skills not deficit list that I used with teachers. We had a lot of teachers who again, as I said, were focused on what was wrong and what was broken. And in their reports, they were documenting that. So we would get these documents, these files on students that would say things like, the student is obnoxious and argumentative and disobedient and aggressive and all of these things that were very, very negative and broken. And I said to them, in the right place, those things could be really, really good skills. And if you dial that back and we stop looking at it as a characteristic of something being broken, if we start looking at it in a more positive light, so just, the glass half full. And so I asked them to kind of dial back what they were seeing. And people often tell me that I'm very passionate, and I am. But oftentimes what people say is I'm also pretty loud. So I don't like to be called loud. I like to be called passionate or enthusiastic. So this is exactly what I said to those teachers: is let's just dial it back a bit. Let's just look at our students in a glass half full kind of way. So take a look at that list of deficits, and we don't have time today to go through it, but what I did was I said, okay, so if the student is hyperactive, what's a better way to say that? And they came up with energetic. The student is energetic. What about willful? And they said determined. Maybe the student is really determined. So argumentative. They came up with committed. Obnoxious. The student is obnoxious. And instead, they dialed it down and they said, driven and tenacious. So you see how just reframing our language and reframing how we see the students we serve is really the first step. And if we start using terms like committed, driven, tenacious, if the person's aggressive, we start calling them kind of macho, bold, physical. Those are that really changes not only how we see them, but how the world sees them and how they see themselves. So please take a look at that skills, not deficits list, or strengths not deficit list, and please start really looking at the language you're using around your students about themselves. And to give you kind of an idea, this is what I'm talking about. So customized employment really talks about reframing the job seekers that we see. So we started working with a young man named Roy, and this is what his file said: attention deficit, developmental disability, bombed out of 3 jobs, 3 programs. He in his last one, he hit his job coach to get out of work. So, and it worked. So can't sit still, can't focus, late, constantly calling in sick, bad attitude, unmotivated, aggressive, violent, limited academics, can't read or write, no computer skills. So again, is there a job for that, Roy? No. So what we have to do is really start looking at reframing Roy. So that's what we did. We started doing discovery with him. We went to his house. We talked to him and his mom at his house. And indeed, he was a very active guy. He was, in the parlance, pretty hyperactive, and didn't like to sit still. So we started saying, let's call him an active guy. He's going to need a job where he's going to move. He's very outgoing and has strong opinions. So we started looking at, okay, we're going to have to find a job that, that's going to be okay with him being boisterous and in an environment that's going to tolerate that. Likes to move, has to move. He had learning disabilities, and in order to learn, he had to move. So we talked about having a situation where he's moving around, not a desk job. Loves variety. And loves to have to do a lot of things, to do a lot of different tasks. He can match words, numbers, use sight words. And was pretty smart. But here's the keys to the kingdom. He loves expensive cars. He's a real gearhead, not just any cars. And what he said was, not those Toyotas and Fords, but the Maybachs, the DeLoreans, the cars that that cost a lot of money. So when you look at those things, you can start seeing employment opportunities. You can start seeing Roy in a different light. So we kind of drop these into Venn diagrams to try and find that center of the bullseye. A job that's going to fit like a glove. So that's going to meet his needs as far as environment, meet his needs as far as skills, and also his passions, his interests, and his aspirations. And hitting that center of the bullseye makes Roy a really unique candidate. If an employer values all of the things all of these things, Roy's going to stand out. So we started looking at, what would be a good job for Roy if it was fast-paced, lots of variety, loves cars, nice cars, not Fords. It doesn't want a desk job, wants to work with his hands. So what does this say to you job developers in the room? Type in the chat what you think would be a good job for Roy. And Michelle, if you could, I can't see the chat.
That's okay.
Read off what they say. What's a good job for Roy? Fast-paced.
Vehicle detailing.
Vehicle detailing. Very good.
Car yard. Expensive car yard.
Expensive car yard. Exactly. So you can see how this works, right? So here's Roy. Unemployable, unmotivated, and within 6 months of starting at a car wash. But this is not just any car wash. This is a car wash that all of the, it's right below Pacific Heights in San Francisco. Pacific Heights is the fancy neighborhood, and the place where all of the chauffeurs and drivers take their employers' vehicles to get detailed. And so it is all the Maybachs, all the Maseratis, all the DeLoreans in the city of San Francisco. And when we took him there, our job developer took him to see this. It was like Disneyland. He was just absolutely gobsmacked by what he saw. And he was running back and forth looking at the cars and running up to the cars, and at one point a man walked over and said, "Can I help you?" Because he was looking, it was just rather odd. And our job developer who was with him was running behind him like, no, don't touch that car. Don't, wait, where are you? And he was like, oh yeah, there's this. So this guy walks over and says, are you, can I help you? To Roy. And Roy just said, he said, that's a DeLorean. And there was a DeLorean there. And the owner just smiled and said, yep, that's a DeLorean. And he said, have you ever seen one? And the job developer said, Roy loves expensive cars. He loves Formula One. He loves, the owner said, or the guy said, well, I'm the owner of this place, and I love Formula One too. And he said, have you ever seen a DeLorean? Let's go look. And he took him over, let him sit in it. He then came back, and Roy was just, beside himself. Our job developer then said, Roy's looking for a job. Do you need any help? And the employer said, well, he turned to Roy and he said, do you have a driver's license? And Roy said, no, he doesn't. And he kind of hung his head. So the guy said, well, everybody here has a driver's license because we have the people take the cars from station to station. And he said, so you have to be able to drive. And the job developer, God bless him, was really very, very insightful. And he had taken his, this gets to be a really long story. He had taken his dog to the beach the weekend before and had found this place because he had taken his dog to the beach, and his dog had drank gallons of seawater and got in the car and then threw up all over. So he was driving home and was just horrified by what was happening. And he just pulled into this car lot to get his car washed and detailed, or just to get it fixed. And he pulled the dog out, and he got out, and he said he went into the waiting room and sat down, and at that point looked around and saw that he was surrounded by people in chauffeurs. He was surrounded by people in uniforms, and he was like, oh, where am I? And then he looked outside and realized that his ratty old Subaru was about the only ratty car there. And then he looked up and saw the prices and was like, holy cow, this is why I'm the only person here in shorts and with a ratty Subaru. So he was kind of like, he paid and ran out. But when we started talking about Roy, he immediately said, I've got it. This is the place. This is the place for Roy. And indeed it was. So he said to the manager, I was here this weekend as a customer. And he didn't say I was the guy with the ratty Subaru with the dog that threw up all over. But he said, and what I saw was some of the stations backed up, that there were log jams. There were log jams at some of the stations that took longer, like the waxing station or the other station. And he said, what if you had a floater or someone who could bounce between stations and support the team as the cars move through? And the employer just kind of sat there for a second and thought about it and said, that does happen. And that would speed up the process. And he turned to Roy and said, do you want a job, young man? You can be my bouncer. And so he hired Roy to be the bouncer, which is exactly what Roy really accelerates at: bouncing, moving, running. And that's exactly what Roy did. He ran from one post to another and was never late for work. So this is a guy whose report said that he never showed up and was always late. Never late. Had to get there at 6 a.m, never late. So highly motivated. Within 6 months of working there, Roy's boss called, and George called and said, I know he's only been here 6 months, but we're going to make him employee of the year because he's really lapping the guys. So Roy was incredibly successful and stayed there forever. And he and George became fast friends. George would take him on Saturdays to Sears Point to watch the races. They really became good friends. So finding that place where our students really will sparkle and shine is what customized employment's all about. And it's also about finding something that there's a reason an employer hires them. So why was Roy successful? Because the job matched not only his skills, but also his interests and his aspirations. Roy had skills and attributes that the employer valued and a passion for the business. The other piece, and this is what today is all about, is our job developer found an employment setting and a job task that matched his skills and interests and minimized his disabilities. And the job developer was able to really demonstrate to that employer how hiring Roy was going to add value and improve his business and his ability to serve his customers or address a workflow issue. And that's what customized employment's all about, is that adding value and finding jobs that fit like a glove. So employer engagement, again, is really about how we approach and reframe and partner with businesses. So how many of you have ever seen an ad like this posted? Help wanted company looking for individual with developmental disabilities, autism, history of aggressive behaviors, extensive history of hospitalization preferred, social challenges, anxiety, okay, dance party, movie day on Friday, call for an application. You don't see these kinds of ads, and there's a reason. But this is, as social service people, this is what we focus on. And again, and this is how we see our job seekers. Unfortunately, we see that what's broken, what's wrong, instead of really focusing in on their skill sets and their strengths. And this is how we approach employers. We sell disability. We go in and say, hi, I work for an organization that works with job seekers with disabilities. Again, an ad like that, you're not going to, no employers posted that ad, yet that's how we go in. Untapped labor pool. Hire the disabled is what we say. Give them a go. And that is deficit marketing. That is really saying, we're a charity organization first, and we've got some people that you might be interested in. What we really need to do is focus on the job seeker's skills, not tax credits or employer stipends. And we also need to look at customized employment. And often I hear customized employment is just job carving. And that's not true. Job carving is a situation where you go into an employer and there's a posted position and you say, you want a person, a cashier, Johnny can't do the cashiering, but he can do the stocking the shelves. He can do these other pieces. Can you take cashiering off so he doesn't have to do that because of his disability? And right away, the employer sees it as a charity move. As I didn't get what I wanted. And it sets up that employee to be an exception or possibly even a problem for that employer. The employer thinks I need someone to do cashiering, and he can't do it. It really is a very stigmatizing situation, job carving. So what we have to do is customized employment. And customized employment is the complete opposite. It goes in and it builds a job and creates opportunities based on an employer's needs and a job seeker's strengths. So you're going in and you're finding the setup button-up things that this individual can do and figuring out how and why an employer would value that, and you're presenting that. So they see them not as a charity case, not as an individual with a disability, but someone who's solving a problem for them. And that's exactly what we want. We want them to see this individual as a solution. And what we've seen is that we go in and we have a couple jobs identified, a couple tasks identified, and we put that forward and explain how that's going to benefit and be an advantage to the business. And then the employer hires them. They go from, we're not hiring to when can they start? And then the employer starts seeing, if this person solved that for me, maybe they can take this on and help in this place too. And we've seen jobs really grow based on this positive customized approach. So with customized employment, the first and foremost, we really have to stop wearing our social worker hat. We have to stop selling disability, and we have to start selling customized business solutions. And we have to act like an employment. Well, we need not just act like one, but be an employment consultant, which takes business acumen and it takes the ability to identify the needs of a business. So one of the things I also gave you is an elevator speech. So when somebody, this is a very important concept. So when somebody says, "What do you do?" What do you say? And you can stop the conversation immediately by saying, "I work with job seekers with disabilities." And I don't know if any of you have actually said that. And, I always talk about how I went to a cocktail party in Los Angeles, and my best friend lives down there. And I said, I'm here in Los Angeles where everything is about the industry and people are gig workers and they're looking for their next job. And I was saying things like, I work with people with disabilities in San Francisco, and people were literally walking away from me and just going to get it. And they would just go immediately away. And we were laughing. I said to my friend, come watch this. Next time somebody comes up and says something to me, just watch what happens. And I say this, I'm from all I had to say was I'm from San Francisco, and they knew I wasn't any help to them, and they'd walk away. So your elevator speech is really, really important. You want to hook them. And so my roommate said or my ex-roommate, my best friend said to me, well, hook them. You got to hook them. And so I was like, oh, okay. So what can I say? So I started saying I was a speed skater from Montreal, and to see what would, and they would immediately say, really? And they'd like stop. And I'd be like, no, I'm not a speed skater from Montreal. But, it was really ridiculous. But it proves, that you need to hook them. So your speech, effective elevator speeches, are incredibly short. It's not a sales pitch. And when you ask someone, what do you do? And they blather on for 8-9 sentences. That is not an elevator speech. Elevator speech is all about, you've got 3 floors to tell this person what you do and hook them. So using everyday language, avoid our jargon or sounding like a salesman or it's sounding like a pre-written script. It's to start a conversation. Your whole goal is to start a conversation. So one of the things that we require for our job developers in their elevator speeches is that they ask a question of their listener, like, and what do you do is a good one, because again, you want to find out who your audience is so that you can tailor your message a little bit. So a successful elevator speech is when the other person says, "Interesting, tell me more." So yeah, you can use the speed skater from Montreal, but again, it won't get you very far. And most importantly, it's not about disability or disadvantage. You use those words, people are going to say, "Oh, you must have so much patience." I'm sure you've all heard it. So take a look at writing your elevator speech. I've given you a little form that you can use, and you see how small that box is. I kept that box really small because I don't want you to write a 9-page elevator speech. It should be 3 or 4 sentences and end with a question. So take a look at that and make sure that everybody who's going to be developing jobs in your organization has a strong elevator speech, because again, this is going to make or break your ability to present and start a conversation with an employer. So the other thing that you want to do with your elevator speeches is you want to use positive language. Again, not disability disadvantage stuff. We don't want to stigmatize our job seekers, but we also want to use business terminology. So the first thing you should do is look at your program's branding and the things that you state on your website and in your marketing materials. You want to make sure that it's really non-stigmatizing, and that it's really focused on, identifying the youth that we serve, strengths and interests and aspirations, and using that instead of talking about serving youth with disabilities. The other thing is stay away from your social service lingo and acronyms, because, or God forbid you work for a government agency, because if you bring up a government agency, that'll really turn off employers and they'll be running the other way. Looking at systematic routine tasks, entry-level work, I've heard people say easy, menial, repetitive work. I'm looking for repetitive jobs. No employer really wants to think that they have repetitive, menial, easy jobs, but they may have some systematic routine tasks that need to be done. The other thing that we talk about is recruitment and screening candidates versus saying job development. I'm a job developer. What we say is, I assist businesses to recruit and screen candidates, or I provide businesses with screened candidates. Business tools and principles, and this is something we're going to talk about, is Lean or Six Sigma. And those are process improvement methods for businesses. And those are how you identify inefficiencies and things that aren't working within that organization or business. The other thing we're looking at is orientation and training. And we use those terms. Well, we help you orient and train, or I guess you call it something else, induction. I guess is what it's called down here, versus job coaching and training employees. We also don't talk about accommodations because accommodations sound expensive. So we talk about work tools, and that doesn't seem so scary. So the other thing you're going to want to look at is making sure that you can tell a business what the advantages are of working with your organization. So this might be a cost-effective way to improve workflow or reduce waste. Those are lean terms, reducing waste, improving workflow. Support core staff so they can concentrate on their key aspects of their position. Provide productive, dependable, loyal employees. We had one employee who was so loyal. Her employer called me one day and was like, I don't know what's going on. Jeevy's here and she's sobbing. She is sobbing in the corner, and we can't even understand what she's saying. And I said, so put her on the phone. Let me see if I can talk to her. And so she got on and she was sobbing. And it took her about 10 minutes to kind of calm down. And I said, what is going on? What is going on? And she blurted out, no work on Monday. And I said, what do you mean no work on Monday? And she, no work on Monday. And I said, Monday is the 4th of July. It's a national holiday. The office is closed. I no work on Monday. And so I said, give me your boss again. So her boss got on the line and I said, well, she's crying because it's the 4th of July and she can't come to work on Monday. And there was a dead silence. And he said, so she's the only one. And immediately she rocketed to being his favorite employee because she was so loyal, so motivated, and so excited about being at work that she didn't want to take the holiday off. So the other thing, reducing recruitment training costs for support position. The diversity card diversifies the workforce, might be something you could pull out. Again, it's like playing poker. You have to figure out what your employers are interested in and what would really kind of speak to them. And those are the cards you put on the table. So leveraging resources of an employment service to assist with the orientation of a new employee. So again, that's the tenor. That is the reframing you need to do around talking to employers. The other piece that we really need to do is the targeting and networking, to really learn about business needs and build relationships with employers. So how does that work? So again, with our Venn diagrams, what we're doing is trying to find positions that are the center of that cluster. So something that matches the person's interests and passions, as you see, an ideal setting, and a job that really fits their talents and skills. Because again, the person will be the ideal employee for that employer and for that job. The other thing we do is networking. We don't do cold calling. We do not cold call an employer. We look for a warm contact. And networking is so powerful. And here's a little graph that kind of explains it. So 80% of job seekers look for work through applying for jobs that are posted someplace. So 80% of the people that are looking for work are applying for posted positions. Employers only post about 20% of their jobs. 80% of their jobs are filled in other ways, through either word of mouth, through employee referral program, or promoting people. So what we really need to be is cognizant of that. So we've got 80% of the job seekers applying for 20% of the positions. That means 20% of the people are going after 80% of the jobs out there. And that's where we need to be. And we need to be in that pool of getting to jobs before they're posted. So in order to do that, we need to work with employers to really make sure that that's happening. The other thing we need to realize is that we can't just walk in and say, "Do you got any jobs?" Because we have the employer does not know us. At that point, we don't have established trust. We also don't know enough about their jobs to make sure that it is a good job for that person. So we have to think of our first contacts with employers as being contacts, and that's it. We then need to get to know the employers and figure out what their needs are. And this is what customized employment talks about, getting to know the employer and determining their needs, because then you can determine if it is a prospect for the individual you targeted this business for. And if it's a good fit, then you can start talking about jobs. So again, don't walk in and the first thing out of your mouth is, "You got any jobs here?" The employer is going to start thinking about, well, I need a marketing assistant, I need an accountant, and those are the things that, many of our people can't take a job off the shelf. So how do we get from contact to job? We have to build a relationship with the employer. We have to learn about the business and the employer's needs and challenges. And we have to determine, is this a good fit? Is this a good fit for the job seeker? And can our job seeker help address these needs? And if that's in place and it's a perfect fit, then what we can do is present our ideas and solutions and our candidates, and that's negotiating positions. So informational interviews are the way that we get to know employers, again, to develop that sense of trust and to learn about their business. One thing that we know about employers is that they hire. They value hiring motivated employees who are excited about their work. Thinking of Roy, he was so excited and thrilled by being at that place. It made his employer feel good. A candidate has skill sets that will add value to the workforce, and a business solution that improves the company's productivity or workflow. So Roy was amazingly energetic, and the employer probably could see that. In addition to that, the job developer was able to pinpoint a way that Roy's passion and ability to bounce was going to help that business, and it fit like a glove. So that is marketing. That is really marketing versus selling. And the difference is, you're selling what you have on your lot. You're selling the features of the job seeker without caring about what the other person's interested in or needs. With customized employment, we are marketing our job seekers. We are not selling them. So employment consultants must talk to employers, identify business needs. It's not about pitching the idea of a program or not pitching the idea of hiring a job seeker. So how do you get in the door? Again, I talked about warm contacts, not cold contacts. We network to find somebody who knows somebody who can get us in the front door. We do not lead with, "I work with people with disabilities," or "Can I talk to you about hiring people with disabilities?" A good opening line would be, "I work with job seekers or students who are, about to leave school, who are interested in your industry." And then you bring up the person your friend or whoever, and you say, "Mary Smith said you are an expert in the field and might be able to help me." who is not going to, you're an expert in the field. Who is going to say, no, I'm not. No, I just, I have nothing to say about this industry. Employers love to talk about what they do. So we get in the door and then they're going to ask you, what do you do? So again, this is where your elevator speech comes in. Who are you with? What does your organization do from the perspective of the employer? Do not sell disability. So you're going to quick elevator speech and then make your initial request pretty easy. Can I come see what you do and talk to you about the skill sets needed to work in this field? 30 minutes. And what we see is we ask for 30 minutes and they will talk for an hour. So they will take us around and we ask for a little tour. Again, one of the things you want to look at is, the right person. And it may not be, in fact, it often isn't a human resources. What customized employment is all about is really finding those. It's about process improvement, and human resources is usually responsible for strategies, projections, policies. They're gatekeepers. They're there to kind of keep you from bothering people about their jobs and what they're doing. And what we really want to do is we want to learn about their jobs. We want to learn about the work that needs to be done. So human resources is that high level, picture of the company and why do you want to work here and how can, why is this such a great place to work? And that's not what we're interested in. What we're really interested in is what is the work being done here and how is it being done? So you can see, I don't know how to do your job, but my book says you're doing it wrong. That's the typical HR person. The other thing is HR isn't the first to know when there's going to be an opening. When you think about it, it's usually the people in the department, the department manager, or the person sitting next to the person that's going to quit. They're the one that knows that there's going to be an opening. Or that things here are so bad in this department, we really need an extra set of hands. They haven't quite gone to HR to say, we need an extra set of hands. So it's really important that we get to the hiring managers, not the HR person. Because again, customizing jobs is about process improvement. So we need to talk to the people who are doing the work. So when you go in, one of the other handouts that we'll send you is an interview site form a visit. When you're there, to how do you possible questions you can ask an employer to get the ball rolling. Because what you want to do is you ask for the meeting, so you need to do your research. You need to get on their website. You need to figure out what their business is all about, which hopefully you've done anyway, and then you need to identify questions that you have. But the main thing you really want to do is ask for a tour so you can see how things are going and see exactly where things are falling apart. And taking a tour and walking around is a really great way to kind of, ask employers, or you can see things that are not working or things happen in front of you that show you exactly where things fall apart. The other thing that we talk about with people is lean principles, which is a job developer's toolkit, is what we say. So lean principles is a process improvement method that really looks at focusing on the customer and really seeks to identify waste and inefficient processes, is kind of lean speak. So it helps us to really learn to talk business language. The language that they use is what lean is. So I really encourage you to read about lean and to understand the principles of it, and then also to really look at learning about waste and process improvement with using this method. Because it's all about inefficiencies. It's all about looking for eliminating the problems and really focusing and improving customer service for businesses. So it's all about working harder, not smarter, as they say. So the customer's experience and process improvement is the goal, and really identifying the services that are adding value is what they say, and eliminating waste, things that are inefficiencies or not helping. to create kind of an on-demand one-piece flow is what they talk about. So on demand is when a customer walks in and says, this is what I want, and this is how I want it. And a one-piece flow kind of gives you an opportunity to create exactly what a customer asks for. In Toyota is the business that kind of came up with lean. And if you lived in Detroit, you'd know that they almost bankrupted Ford Motor Company and Chrysler back in the day using this method, because Chrysler and Ford Motor Company, their whole business process was to build cars as fast as they could possibly build cars. So they were building cars as fast as they could, but then they were realizing that people didn't want the cars that they were building. Or they hadn't ordered the cars that they wanted. So then they were dealing with all of these cars that nobody wanted or nobody asked for or weren't exactly what the customer wanted. Because again, customers are fickle. So what Toyota said is we have to wait until the customer orders something, and then we have to provide it for them as efficiently and fast as possible. So really get to know lean. Fast food is for those of you who are as old as me. When they first started doing fast food, you remember they used to build hamburgers as fast as possible, and all the hamburgers would be the same, right? And I don't know about some of you, but if you walked in and like me and said, I don't want mustard and I don't want pickles on mine, you got this look, this horrified look from the person behind the counter, and they were like, oh crap. And so they would like pull the order and they'd go back in the back and they'd have to special, make your hamburger. The other thing that they also did is they put these hamburgers up under a Bunsen burner. And then when the bell rang, they had been sitting there too long. So the possibility of bacteria was pretty high, and they would just scrape them all into the trash. So that's wasted resources right there and wasted time. Because you made all these hamburgers, you can't sell them now. So again, you're making hamburgers before your customers ordered them. Nobody came in to order them. You end up throwing them away. So what they said was fast food needs to really look at doing a one-piece flow. When a customer comes in and says, I want a hamburger, I don't want ketchup, I don't want mustard, and I want extra pickles. So that's when the have it your way kind of mindset came around, and that's lean. And if you go in now to a fast food restaurant, and this is what you should go into one of the fast food restaurants, because you will see a very lean business, lean in action. And you look at, is there any wasted motion? Is there any wasted resources? Is there a one-piece flow? Is the customer, when the customer orders, what happens? So go order a hamburger and see what happens. The other thing you should do is look for these wastes, looking for wastes. This is what lean teaches us. So corrections are errors. So if you make an error, what Ford Motor Company found was they would something was wrong in the engineering, and they would build that into hundreds and hundreds of cars and have to do a recall. That's a correction. That's a waste. Those hamburgers that didn't get sold and got scraped into the trash, those were hamburgers that were made without a customer order. That's a correction. That actually is overproduction. So you're producing more than a customer asks for, more cars than is necessary, and then you have to put them on sale. Motion. If you go into a fast food restaurant now, you'll notice that people stand at a station and they have all of their tools and everything they need right at their beck and call. If you go into a manufacturing setting, you will see the people on the line do very little stepping away, because if you step away from the line and something goes wrong, something goes really wrong, and things could break and things could start shooting all over. So you really kind of you want to keep the people who are on the line. So wasted motion. What lean says is everybody on that line needs to have all of their tools within arm's reach, so that they're not walking around looking for things, trying to find something, and also just making sure that that things are where they're supposed to be. So those are jobs that we often pull out. How many of you work in an office setting where there's only one printer and it's way, way across the office, or one bathroom? You know, you have to run across the entire across the entire office. So that's wasted motion. So really looking at, you know, how to build something that's going to be conducive to your workers. Material movement and transport is another one. So that's, with inventory, offsite storage is a good idea, is a good example. So, you know, you have made too many cars and you've got to go take those cars and put them someplace because you don't know what to do with them. Or you've made too much and you're just gonna move it over here and then have to move it back. Or you buy too much, you have too much inventory, and then you have to store it, and then you have to go get it again. So that's what they're talking about, material movement and transport. Waiting, this is the biggest one, your customers waiting. So anytime you as a customer go into a business and you have to wait, so in a doctor's office or in a restaurant, you know, that's broken in the eyes of lean. So really looking at, you know, why are you waiting? What can stop that waiting or shorten that waiting period? Inventory is too much or too little. One of the things that Toyota, when they came, Oni, who the guy from Toyota who came over and was the person who kind of came up with the lean system, came over, and he came over to the United States. I think I'm in the United States. I'm sorry. But he came over to the United States and saw our supermarkets and was astounded by them because they're a one-piece flow for everything. And they have an inventory system that tracks what's purchased. And how many of those things are purchased so that they can reorder just enough and keep just enough on the shelves. Because again, with food in a grocery store, things rot. So you don't want a lot of extra inventory. You don't want things expiring. So one of the things that they talk about in lean is really having just enough inventory to do the work that needs to be done and to make sure that you're not over ordering, because again, that's wasted resources. Processing, and this is kind of over processing. And we do this all the time. We say to people, well, in order to get to our job developers, you need to go through all sorts of training classes. And you need to do this resume writing class and this interviewing skills class and all of this stuff before you can go talk to our job developers. That's over processing. They didn't come in and say, I want training. They came in and said, I want a job. So that's what lean looks at, is, you know, really focusing in on our customers and what the customers are asking for. I want a hamburger with no ketchup and no pickles, right? And then the last one, underutilization of people, is wasted talent. So if you have a person who's highly skilled, and this is what we treat them like a surgeon, is what they say all the time in lean, is when you have someone with a extremely qualified person, and they're doing kind of set up, button up stuff, they're not doing brain surgery. They're not doing what they're trained to do. So what we do all the time is we go in and we try to find the rainmakers. We try to find the surgeons. Who's the surgeon? And then what we say is, how do we support that person to do the job they're doing? And it doesn't just necessarily mean a highly trained, certified, a doctor. But if you go into hospitality, into a hotel or into the hotel industries, what the customer wants is a clean room. So the rainmakers for that hotel, the people that are the most important people in that workforce, are the housekeeping staff. So if you can find ways to support the housekeeping staff, you are increasing their bottom line. So again, underutilization of people, really supporting those supporting the surgeons. Again, you don't want the surgeon going down and kind of mopping up the OR after they're done. You don't want the surgeon sterilizing the instruments. You want the surgeon doing brain surgery. You don't want the surgeon looking for tools. That would be bad too. If this in the middle of surgery, shoot, I've got the wrong the retractor. I'll be right back. I'm going to just walk down to the sterile processing and get that. So that's what lean looks at, is any of the times that those kinds of things are happening, and God forbid those are happening in your hospitals. But so during informational interviews, what we're looking for is we look for waste. So wasted talent, identifying the surgeons, as I said, are they doing surgery? What are the setup button-up tasks that support that essential work? And those are the things that we pull out. And if we can pull out those setup button-up things, that surgeon can do more surgery. Wasted time, orders not being processed because they're too busy taking new ones. Machines or supplies that are not maintained and they break. Those are instances where we can fix things. Wasted resources, overproduction, inventory supplies never used, too much, things expire, all of those things. So we often get jobs. Well, one of the jobs that we got, there was a charge nurse in a hospital, and she was too busy. Again, surgeon, charge nurse. She was too busy to do inventory. So she just would check every box. What do you need to order? Check every box, just so that she knew that they weren't going to run out of things. Pretty soon you couldn't walk into the supply closet because there was so much stuff, so much inventory. And we went in there and we were like, what is going on in here? And the nurses were like, I can't even get in there to get what I need. So we went through the closet and we said, you have, it was pediatrics and and I said, you have 8 boxes of extra large gloves in here, and every one of the doctors was a woman in the department. And I said, how many extra large hands are in this department? And the charge nurse said, none. And I said, what are you doing with 8 boxes of extra large gloves? And she said, well, and that's where she admitted that, I just checked the boxes because I don't have time to do the inventory. So we cleared out everything. We got it down to how many of this do you need? How much of this do you need to have on hand to do your job? And then we had a person, a young man hired to maintain that. And he did the inventory for her. So again, supplies that are too much, not being used, not what's needed. And then overproduction, things expire. This other company had a welcome packet for their new employees. And it had all sorts of stuff in there. And one of the, there were lots of sheets of paper that talked about, where the nearest cafe is and, and restaurants and things like that around there. And that, of course, changes on a daily basis in San Francisco because restaurants are going under faster than you can even imagine. And so, they were like, we have to update that all the time. And the stuff that's in there is not, and then we have to say to them, never mind about that. That's not, welcome. Here's your packet of stuff that's obsolete. So, what they wanted was somebody who could put those together. And we said, well, how many do you need? And she said, well, we've got thousands of them because we just sent it away to a printer and had them do the handwork on it, the finishing work. And we said, well, how many do you need? And she said, well, we hire about 50 people, a week. And for our offices. And, so probably, about 50. And, and so we set up a place where there were 50, all of the things were in little cubbies, and the individual collated 50 and had a crate there with the 50. And then if anything changed, they just had to go through the 50 instead of the thousands to kind of rejigger them. So again, it was overproduction. We also look with lean, we look at identifying ways to streamline processes and improve workflow. Again, having Roy bounce really speeded up the process, because he could go to the places where they needed an extra pair of hands on that car lot, or when they were cleaning the cars. So really identifying, what is the product and services? Is there a way to make the product faster or services better? Is there a way to make the product cheaper or save money? And are there ways to really increase the number of customers served or improve the customer service experience? So, having someone who really knows a lot about your business, the business or the product, be the person who's the customer interface is really important. And so if you can help spring somebody so that they can work with customers more, an employer will really buy that. And the reason they want their customers happy, they don't want them waiting. They want them getting what they want, and they want them getting the information that they want, right? Is if you look at what it takes, it costs 80 cents to keep a customer, and it costs $3 American dollars to make a new one. So that's a big cost savings. If you're not, if customer is happy, they're going to stay. If they're not happy, they're going to leave, and you're going to have to generate a new customer. The other cost factor that we also see is that in many places it costs $5,000 to $10,000 to hire and train a new employee, especially in a complex position, say in a hospital, because they have to do background checks, they have to do onboarding, they have to do physical exams, they have to do all sorts of things before you can even start. And then, it is a very complex and nuanced setting. So there's lots and lots of training. So that gets very, very expensive. And those employers cannot make a hiring mistake. So they're going to be really, really, they're going to have to know I'm getting the right person for the job. So that's why it's really important that we make sure and present a person that is qualified and capable and really excited about being there. The other thing that we want to do is we want to identify issues and challenges. What's not working is obviously what we want to try and fix. So, we're looking at customer or employee complaints, log jams, backlogs, long lead times, waiting customers. All of those things should be big red flags. Unassigned but critical tasks. So, we've gotten a lot of jobs where, they needed things. They paid the bills in the accounting department, but they needed to scan them and upload them into the system. So, and nobody really did it because it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So one guy works for an investment, Veritas, which is a real estate investment firm for residential units. And they have 1 million properties, and they get 1 million PG&E bills and 1 million electrical bills. And the accounting department would put those all into the system, but then they just let them stack up, and they wouldn't get scanned and put into the drive. And then when they tried to find something, of course, all they had was these massive piles of bills that they had to look through. So that was a big red flag when we were walking around. And that was one of the things that we put on the person's list as things that he can do. So burnout, high turnover. So if you've got burnout, you've got people really, overworked or with too much stuff on their plate. What can you take off their plates? Managers or key staff pulled away from their core task. Again, that's that wasted talent. And then you're also looking at, workflow fluctuations. So rush times, seasonal fluctuations, crunch times, sporadic but important tasks that aren't getting done. So really looking for challenges and issues around things like this. So the next piece of our process is to really negotiate. So when we start seeing there's challenges what they are at that point is their opportunities. If we can start seeing opportunities for our job seeker to really benefit that employer, we can start negotiating for a new position. And again, this is a win-win situation. So we want to present our ideas and solutions for that business and really assist the employer to understand how customizing a job can really benefit their business or their customers. And then our next piece is to really help them to organize that new position. So going in and really helping them to put it in place. So that's customized employment. And this is an example of customized employment in action. So here's a young man that we worked with. His name is Stephen. And he came in and we were told he didn't really want to work and that he was really scared and unmotivated and all sorts of things. So we started with, reframing. Let's look and see, this is what he came in with. All of these things are really no one's looking for Cornelia de Lange syndrome, stutterer, emotionally immature individual with gastroesophageal reflux disorder, who's resistant to new things, perseverates OCD, can't make a decision, late attendance issues, especially when he's anxious, limited academics. There's no jobs for that, Stephen. So we had to start our discovery and figure out who he was. So what we found was he was really adventuresome, and he loved maps, and he loved going geocaching with his dad on weekends. He loves using a GPS. He's really, really into it. Follows the rules. Very Germanic. Does it never crosses when the light is red. Never, would never think to jaywalk. Really, whatever the rule is, you should follow it. This was the big thing. We went to his house, and he brought down his patch collection, which was patches from fire departments and police departments and EMTs and bus driving. And everywhere they ever travel, his parents have to stop his mom says we allow him to go to one place every trip, because otherwise all we'll be doing is going to fire stations and police stations. So they allow him to pick one place, and they will go there. And she said, and he has to go in. I don't go in. I won't go in. He has to go in and ask the precinct officer or the fire department person if they'll give him a patch. And he's got over 300 at this point, and they're all in these little glassine envelopes, and they're all alphabetized. And he looks at them, like a baseball card, collection. So it's his pride and joy, that patch collection. Rides a bike, very organized, very, very organized. Obviously, that patch collection was all alphabetized and in the little envelopes so that they didn't get dust on them and things like that. Hard worker. His mother said if he's really into something, he'll work really hard at it. If he's not interested in it, then that's when we have trouble. So a hard worker when he's motivated. So we knew right away we were going to have to find something that really motivated him. He loves emailing. He loves Google. He loves the internet. Loves a good disaster. What we found is that he actually had a police scanner that he monitored. And every time there was a car accident or a shooting or the fires. Oh my God, the fires in the Oakland Hills were such a big deal, and the rains, the atmospheric river, and all the crap that he was just in his element. Good disaster, nothing better. So we started looking at what's a good job for Stephen. So we started looking at disaster preparedness and community safety, and maps or public transit. And helping or directing people. He loved to tell people what to do. So what's a good job for Stephen? Punch it in the chat. See what you come up with.
It's very quiet on the chat. You've stumped them, Sarah.
Disasters. What happens when there's a disaster? What happens? Who goes out? Not just the fire department, but social services too, right?
Got council assistant, work health and safety, the SES. So that's our kind of
emergency services. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Tourist Information Centre,
Beautiful
officer, the state emergency services again. Yes. So
working for the trams, right?
Yep.
The
data management,
the Tourist Information Center.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Working at the airport, we call them TSA agents. Put your computer and your shoes in the bucket. Right.
Emergency relief services. So often after an emergency, there's a whole lot of services that have to come up. So we have the American Red Cross, which takes a van out, and they if there's a big apartment fire, they will take a big RV out that has blankets and coffee and things like that. So the people that are homeless for a minute or for longer can sit in that while the fire department is putting out the fire. Good. So you see
There are jobs for Stephen after we start reframing and start looking at what he's passionate about. We don't just do one VEN, we do multiple ones. So the other one another VEN, we just dropped the other things from his profile into it. So organizing things, likes gear, technology, that police scanner, really, really important. And then police and first responders, EMTs, emergency medical responding. What's a good job with these? Where's the center of that bullseye? One of the things we thought about was when an EMT goes out, when an ambulance goes out, those are like giant mobile crash carts in a hospital. Everything is in its place. Everything is in the same place. So if you are an EMT, every ambulance is exactly the same. So you know where to find the morphine when you need it, and you know where to find everything else when you need it. So they're organized the same way. All of the stuff in an ambulance is put in a bucket and in a specific place in this bucket, and it has a seal on it. So whenever they use something and they pull that seal off, when they go back to the station, they will pull the buckets that have the seal broken, and they will restock those buckets. So restocking the buckets was something we thought Stephen could do. Cleaning the ambulance was something we thought Stephen could do. And filling the buckets that had been opened and resealing them was something that we thought would be a great job for him.
And some others were like something like a camping shop.
A camping shop.
Where, all the gear and the army gear.
Right.
Yep. So, and get emergency relief and a transport hub. Where all the buses and trains.
Now you guys are thinking. Yeah. Now you're thinking.
That's some good stuff.
Yeah. And all of these would have been ideal and fun for, and in Stephen's mind, the best, like working in Disneyland, right? So one of the things that we like to do is we like to kind of present our possible solutions. And again, when we're going to go in, bear in mind your the things you just thought about for Stephen. So we want to just show the employer. We do a potential task list to get the employer thinking and thinking about not their posted positions, not the jobs they have posted, but thinking about the tasks that need to be done that aren't getting the attention needed. We speak the employer's language on these task lists, using their jargon or their organizational terms. We list specific jobs, doing what for whom. It's not just, scanning, but it's scanning bills for the accounting department, scanning the PG&E bills, scanning the, really specific, so they can say, oh my God, they're talking about that big pile over there. So it also lists the most important tasks first. So which tasks will have the greatest impact? And this is what we came up with. We placed him. Did I take this slide out? We found this organization called GALS, which is the people who outfit police, fire departments, bus drivers, EMTs. It's the place with the patches, the place they make the uniforms for all of these civic positions. And we went in, and it was a mess because the customer service process of outfitting a policeman or outfitting a fireman or an EMT is very labor intensive, because you have to give them everything from their hat to their boots, to their pants, to their belt, to their holsters, to their, and it's based on a POS from the police department. So nobody can shop there except policemen, firemen, and other people, because you can't just walk in and say, I want a police uniform. So these places exist, and we had no idea, of course, because we didn't know anything about how this happens. So we went in and we looked around and we said, this is really the perfect spot for him. Look, they've got a room full of patches. He's going to be so excited, and we'll just have to make sure that he doesn't ask for them. And so we looked at, kind of helping with that, and helping with, the front of the store, kind of maintaining the the uniform racks and things like that, making sure that the pants and everything were folded correctly, and just cleaning up the sales floor so that their service staff, their customer service staff, can really help their customers through that long process of getting a uniform. And then what we said was, if the front of the store looks this bad, the back of the store probably looks 10 times worse. So we thought about, there's probably boxes of stuff back there that need to be processed. There's probably, inventory that's not on the shelves. There's probably, if they ship things out, there's probably no one to do that, or that's going to be left till the very end, So we came up with ideas about what might happen in the back, and we put this potential task list together for Galls. And then the other thing that we do sometimes, not always, is we close the deal with a cost savings analysis. So we really kind of estimate the cost savings of not using, and in this instance, a customer service person, which is probably more than we were going to ask for minimum wage for Stephen because of he's a little slower making decisions and finding things and stuff like that. So we were going to ask for minimum wage for him. But I'm sure that their customer service people were actually making a little bit more. So what we did was we came up with if they hire him to do these jobs that customer service person is now doing, they're going to save that little bit of money. So we did a cost savings analysis. We only include these if the customized job will help get the work done in a less expensive way. And sometimes you're adding a position, which of course will not result in a cost savings, but it will result in getting things right, which might result in a cost savings, but we can't really predict that, or we can't really state that. So a project, a cost savings, the other thing that we look at is kind of looking out 5 years and looking at the cost of living adjustment as well. So this is what a cost analysis looks like for Galls. So a regular person, we looked up on their website, was making $22.10. What minimum wage was at the time was $13.75. And so if they hired Stephen for 20 hours a week, that was 20 hours of a store or warehouse manager, or a customer service rep, not doing the little setup button up stuff. And so if they hired Stephen to be just a merchandise processor at that rate, they would save $8,528 in the first year. And then we bring in the candidate. Here's your perfect candidate. And we use a professional looking resume, and then, flop that, and really look at starting a conversation with them about the job seeker's skills, not deficits. And it also, what we look at is, kind of translating, why would you hire this person? So that potential task list really translates. Why would, what the features of Stephen, he can process this, he can take care of the little stuff, he can take care of that, into benefits for the employer. You can serve your customers faster, better, more efficiently. And hiring this candidate is the solution to an employer's problem. It's not about charity or giving someone a chance. And here he is. They immediately saw the benefit of it. They said, when can he start? They were all about it. He's a big part of the team. And he's seen as a solution. So they use him in the back processing merchandise. They use him in the front when the sales floor gets way out of control, and he goes through and does the straightening. He does the rehanging. He does the size runs, all of those things. And he's a valued employee. So we're not hiring to when can he start. So Stephen had skills and attributes that the employer valued. He was extremely interested in the business. We had to, of course, tell him he couldn't ask for the patches because those weren't Galls to give, and that it would be cheating because he needed to get those from the precinct or the fire department themselves and not from Galls, because that's cheating. And he agreed. And they were, it was funny because the fact that police officers shop there and fire department people shop there, and a few of them walked in and knew him. Because he knows all of them. He knows all the police because he stops and talks to them all the time. He and his girlfriend decided one day that they were going to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge, and which I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but it's a long walk. And they got to the other side and they decided that they were tired. So he called the police to get a ride back. And they picked him up and took him back. And the police officer knew his name and knew, oh, Stephen. Anyway, so again, job developer identified needs, presents costs effectively. It's a solution for business. Why wouldn't they do this? So let's just take questions very quickly.
Well, thank you, Sarah. That was amazing. And, I've learned lots. I really like the idea of, that talking the language of employers, that the focus is on, profit and efficiency. It's not about, triple bottom lines or a charity kind of model. So, that was great. We don't have a lot of time, but we did have some questions. And if anyone else has a question, please enter it into the chat. One of the questions was more, and we have another webinar coming up for Careers Week on the 17th of March that we'll advertise, which is where this question, but I think this will be, Sarah can answer this now, but can you provide examples or where job seekers can't identify their interests and passions, but they just say they want to work but it's that kind of, you can't get anything around, well, what is it that your interests are?
You better do some exploration types of things, because there are indeed probably some things that person does not want to do. And we also, one individual we worked with, his teacher had told him he was big and strong, you should work in a garden center. And that kind of got plugged into his head. And he came in and told us, I want to work in a garden center. And so we were like, oh, beautiful, easy. So we took him out, and of course he didn't like dirt. And and didn't like getting his hands dirty. And he found out what manure was and was like, I'm not. And we asked, you said you wanted to work at a garden center, and have you ever? No, I had never worked in a garden center. And we said, well, what's your where'd you get this idea? And he said, my teacher told me I should work in a garden. So be careful. And if people don't know what they don't know what they don't know. So getting people out and really exploring is what we need to do with youth. Trying all sorts of things.
We also had a question, Sarah, just around, does this work in, regional or rural settings, where, the options aren't necessarily there with a lot of employers?
Right. Well, customized employment also talks about self-employment, which is one option. But in rural areas, you can make this make sense in small mom and pop businesses. Again, figuring out how that mom and pop, what are the little things that are really, not getting done. And how can you support their business? And most, mom and pop stores, they will tell you, I work 10 hours a day. And if you can eliminate 2 hours out of their day by helping them do kind of the setup button up stuff, they will see that as a value. So we look for, that kind of opportunity is, how do you support a business and help the proprietor, save some time or not have to work a 10-hour day.
Brilliant. And there was around, that 30-minute visit or going, is there times where you just kind of walk out that or when you do that initial kind of that this isn't the right workplace, or is it really, it's kind of like, when do you pull the pin?
Well, you will, if you walk in, you will, and your job seeker well, you will walk into a place and you will say, this is Disneyland. This is it. If you walk in and you're like, oh my God, this is chaotic. It looks like a horrible place to work, or it is a place that will set this person's hair on fire because it's disorganized, or it's, whatever, or it's outside, or it's cold, whatever the person has said as a deal breaker, you want to kind of look at. But not be just, because if there could be a deal breaker that's not really a deal breaker. Like Roy told us he wouldn't work in the morning, and he that when his boss said, well, can you get here at 6? He was like, yes, and we were kind of like, and we just let him go, and he was never late. Could he get to the job that he hated at 6 a.m? No, because he didn't really want to be there. So again, deal breakers might be deal breakers, but in the right environment. We had one guy that was asked to do scanning and uploading, and he said, I don't want to do that. That's women's work. And the woman who was there and I were kind of horrified. But she leaned over and knocked on the door, and it was a radio station, and he loved this DJ, and the DJ was right in the room next to where he was filing. And he came out, and she said, well, this is Chewy Gomez. And he was just like, I could be, and he and Chewy became really good friends. So, and he was doing women's work. So yeah, it's if you can match something, again, it's really a case by case, and that's what customized employment's all about, individual by individual. You will know if it's the right spot, and in fact, when we're targeting things, when we come across, we do those Venn diagrams, and someone says, "Well, what about this?" and the whole room goes quiet. People are like, "That's it. That's the perfect spot. That is the perfect job." And it's just magical when it works.
Well, thank you, Sarah. There's a few other questions, and we'll get back to those questions, but we're right on 4. So once again, Sarah, I'm so pleased that you're able to come to Australia and spend some time with us.
It's lovely to be here.
Do this looking at employers, and I found that inspirational. I hope other people did as well. And we're getting lots of nice messages that people have enjoyed it. So thank you all again. Please find our newsletter or contact us, and have a good weekend.